We got one more guest, one more segment left for this week on Bang the Book Radio. That is the Odds Report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook, the head risk manager down there in Costa Rica. And as I mentioned, recording that on Skype every week, so does sound a little bit different from the Super Contest segment here, but matching the audio volumes, hopefully it's not that big of a deal for everybody out there. Really it's about the information. It's about getting everything out there, so hopefully not too much of a problem for all of our listeners out there. Without further ado, here is this week's version of the Odds Report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook.
All right, I'm joined now by Brent, the head risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook in Costa Rica for this week's version of the Odds Report. Brent, how's it going today, man?
It's good. We're swamped. There's absolutely, I'm going to say, plethora of events going on this Thursday. I've got, we got preseason NBA. We got, do I have CFL today? I got college or NFL football. We got college football. We got hockey, baseball playoffs. It's just, I don't mind this time of year just because college basketball hasn't started yet.
Yeah, no, that's true. I know you and I always talk about college basketball and your love of that market, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk about that again down the line a little bit. Real quick, before we get into the football stuff, what's the volume like in the NHL?
It's light. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely behind. Well, it's behind behind baseball, basketball, football, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the thing is, we've got a few guys who play it big, which makes it kind of interesting for us. And it's not as easy for us to balance the book just because the volume is lower. And even if you move kind of like 10 cents off a market price or whatever, you don't get the kind of buyback that you would in an NFL game for sure. So there's less of an ability to kind of like risk management in terms of getting a lot of money back. But again, it's the same deal in terms of watching the markets and trying to getting a feel for looking at your counts and where markets are going. And if things, our counts and money's going one way and the market's going the other way, again, the assumption is that sharp money drives the market, and that holds true in hockey as well, because there's obviously sharp guys who bet that. I mean, there's sharp guys in just about everything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely something we see in the NHL market quite a bit, and something I would encourage everyone to follow, because I think there are some pretty good opportunities when it comes to NHL betting, and that market is really fascinating, especially because, as you mentioned, lower handle, a lot more respect, a lot more influence with some of those sharper bettors that are out there. And those line moves are very, very discernible too. I mean, when you see one, you know it.
Yeah, and then too as well, you can look out in the market and you can pick and choose what teams are going to be favored and overplayed by the public. You can look at certain totals and stuff like that. Like I'm just going to throw the Maple Leafs for example. Like their games, they're a high scoring team with a whole lot of offense, and their value usually is kind of picking your spots where you can find unders and stuff like that. The same with kind of like NBA handicapping as well in hockey. I mean, hockey's they got deep lineups but it's a very physical game, so you get like travel factors come into play, and how many games and how many nights and all that kind of stuff. I think hockey is one of the it's one of the more fun games to handicap as well in that respect.
All right, so we'll get into the football stuff here for our listeners, and we'll start in the Big Ten, game 319-320, Purdue and Penn State, and this line's been a runaway train this week.
Yeah, it's not great for us either, because my count is going the same way as the sharp money came in. This line is 28.5 or 29 out there right now. Penn State is at home to Purdue. Penn State sitting, not ranked number 12 now, 4-0, hosting 1-3 Purdue. And sharp money came in early at -25. And again, this once you get up to a number like 25, I'm not going to say there's key numbers and stuff like that. So yeah, we blew through like 27, 28, no problem at all. We're up to 28.5, and there's even a 29 out in the market right now. So the idea that we might hold on to a number like 28, and well, I was going to say in college football, but even NFL, I mean, if there ever was a number that high, it's just not, you don't worry about something like that. You don't worry about a game landing 28 or something like that. But I've got a count about 2-1 favoring Penn State. Sharp and public money all going the same way, with the home team undefeated at home to a team that's only won once so far this year. So this game, like I said, it's tipping 29. I'm probably, I see 29 out of the market, so I'm probably going to join them rather quickly and see if we get something back.
That's what I was just going to say, because you've got a Purdue team here with substantial injury issues. That came out earlier in the week, probably the reason why 25 was grabbed more than anything else. Is 29 or 28.5, I guess, where you are right now, has it been a buyback point or just kind of a stopping the bleeding point?
It's pretty much been a stopping the bleeding point right now. I mean, even at 28, my count wasn't bad. I just kind of followed the market back up. And again, like I said, I'm not concerned about getting, middle on like a 27 or a 28 or whatever. So I went up with the market. That's why I'm kind of hesitant to go to 29 yet, just because even at 28, I was starting to get two-way action, but I have followed the market upwards.
All right, so we go to game 333, 334 here as we stay sort of in the Big Ten. One Big Ten team in this one. That is a massive home favorite in Wisconsin, a 35-point favorite here. What's the sharp involvement, though?
Yeah, I mean, talk about how big a favorite Wisconsin is. And, sometimes people will say, oh, sharp guys don't bet big numbers. But as you saw with Penn State, I mean, if they find value there at the 25 and you're looking at the numbers 20.5 or 29, well, obviously they were right in laying the 25. This game here with Kent State, same thing. I usually don't like getting over money. That's because the public usually goes that way as well. This is the case, in this game as well. I got sharp money on the over here. This is Wisconsin at home to Kent State, over 57 is where my sharp money came. I'm at 59 right now. I think there's a 58.5 out on the market as well, but 59 is where where I am right now, kind of trying to stay at the high end. My count just, is about 2-1 favoring the over, so it's not a massive count. But again, a game like this, you're just not going to get a massive count more because of Kent State, not because of Wisconsin. Sidewise on the spread, I'm about 4-1 my wager count favoring Wisconsin, so kind of no surprise there. I think this number did open 35.5, and it's kind of like ticked down to 35 right now. So that's kind of where I'm hanging with everyone else in the market at 35. Even though my wager count is 4-1 favoring Wisconsin, it's not really a very big chart in terms of money wise. So I'm just kind of hanging at the low end or where everyone seems to be. But my total has ticked up to 59. There are some, I think, a 58.5 out there right now, like I said. But this the numbers seems to be solid in terms of the spread, but the total's gone up. And again, I got sharp and public money as well on this one with Wisconsin going over.
All right, so we moved down one spot on the board here, but we stay in the Great Lakes region. Game 335, 336, a directional Michigan rivalry, Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the square show so far. We've got a 25-point favorite there, an over with the Wisconsin game, and here we got another over game with Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan. It's kind of like one of those, it's almost like a stereotype over here. I'm sitting at 54 now. My sharp money came over 52.5. Wager count is about 3-1 favoring the over as well. The count on the side, pretty much even. This number is sitting at 6. It opened, I think, 5.5 on Eastern Michigan. So move slightly up, just a half point from 5.5 to 6. So no big move really on the side there. But 52.5 to 54. And again, I could probably see this number going up a little bit higher. I think there's like 153.5 hanging out there right now. So that's why I'm still staying at 54. But if anyone goes up to 54.5, I'll probably join them, just because it seems to be, the type of game where, the Michigans, the Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, Western Michigan, public just generally bets those games over.
Now, selfishly, I've got a little bit of interest in Central Michigan here for this game. Haven't played it yet. Probably going to be part of our Golden Nugget card for this weekend. Where do you think this spread is going to go?
Judging by my count, I'm guessing it might tick up. I might just see it. It seems to be trending that way. Most of that money and bets came at 5.5, and it's kind of evened out now that we've gone to 6. But if I was going to say it's going to trend one way, I would say it's probably going to go that way. And again, you're talking about an Eastern Michigan team that's 3-1, Central Michigan 2-3. But again, the whole the road dog in a Michigan rivalry like this is kind of where sharps generally would find value. I'm kind of hesitant to say it's going to go to 6.5, because I think sharp money might come back at a spot like that.
All right, so we move down the board here to the Mountain West Conference, 345, 346, San Diego State and Colorado State. Again, you mentioned that we've had kind of 3 squarer sides in terms of sharp action sides and totals. Seems like this one's kind of going the same way.
Yeah, and road favorites, it's kind of like one of those, generally speaking, if you're talking about sharp money, they do try and find value in home dogs. That's just kind of like a common thing, looking for value in home dogs. But they didn't find it on this one, and the money's gone with them. San Diego State minus 6.5 is where I took that sharp money. We're at 7.5 right now. I think one book finally popped up an 8 today, so I see it going that way. Maybe surprisingly, the count is pretty much even, though. Now that's happened kind of, since I went to 7.5, I started to get money back on Colorado State. So I don't see a rush to go with, the highest number on the board, which is the 8, just because I'm starting to get Colorado State money back at plus 7.5. As I said, the sharp money came at 6.5. So really, if you can kind of like straddle that 7, it's not, not really a bad spot to be. San Diego State too, you kind of looking at, they're 3-1 right now, and they lost a close one to a solid Utah State team. They beat UCLA for whatever that's worth, and Colorado State just getting beat up by pretty much everybody. They're getting beat bad. So I kind of I could see this number going up just because I think maybe as a bookmaker you try and stay as high as you can, but also respecting the fact that sharp money is going to look for the comeback money on a home dog, but they pick their spots as well. And this just might be a spot where the sharp money is not going to get involved on the dog no matter what you do. And, I'm kind of fortunate that I've got, it's not, what you would really call a sharp public split because it's not a very marquee game, but I'm starting to get, trickle money back at Colorado State. So I'm taking small comforts in that, Adam.
All right. So we moved down a few spots on the board here to the Pac-12. And I remember when this used to be a marquee game. And now game 351, 352, Washington is a 16.5 point road favorite in Palo Alto. I mean, this is a line we haven't seen in about 15 years in terms of Stanford being a home dog of this magnitude in this head-to-head series. And where's the sharp money?
Yeah, I mean, Washington, it seems like we talk about them every single week that they're getting sharp money. I think a couple of weeks back they were on the road as like a 20-point favorite, I think, against Hawaii as well. They've been, I don't know, I think the sharps are just kind of looking at them and finding value in them. I would say they've probably been played 3 times this season at least. This might be the 4th. Sharp money did come in on Washington. They're a road favorite here at Stanford. Minus 14 is where I got bet with the sharp money. As you alluded to, this number is 16.5 right now. Quarterback situation with Washington with Jacob Eason he's settled in quite nicely there. They had that real, I guess, disappointing week 2 loss to Cal where they lost by that 1 point. And that's kind of, Washington was right up there in the preseason rankings, and perhaps, they are as good as their early rankings were. They're probably going to have to run the table, and they've got, a couple big games going against, one of the, top 20 ranked teams like Oregon and Utah. So they got some big games left. Fortunately for me in this one, I can't really explain why, but I'm starting to get some money back on Stanford. My wager count actually favors them 3-1. So I am sitting at 16.5 where pretty much everyone else in the market is. But ever since I got to 16.5, it's almost all Stanford money. So I'm kind of, taking small comforts in that. If I can get, all my money back at plus 16.5 and cancel out the 14 that the Sharps laid, I'd be happy with that.
KJ Costello not going to play for Stanford here. Will be Davis Mills again, so keep that in mind if you are interested in betting that game. Brent, I do want to go off script for a minute here, and I'll do this again a little bit later in the segment. I apologize, but there are a couple of marquee games here on Saturday that I just want to get some thoughts on here, beginning with game 355, 356, Iowa and Michigan, because we have seen this line move down here for this massive Big Ten clash on Saturday, and it just seems like nobody out there wants any part of Michigan based on what their body of work has been here so far. Is this a public fade of Michigan driving this line down, or do you think someone out there in the market did get some sharp money?
Yeah, I mean, I do have, quite a decent wager count on this game, as you would expect. Looking at my count in-house, I'm about 2. It's not even 2-1 favoring Iowa, so not really a big count either way. I do have a lot of bets, but just really good two-way action. I really can't say much, much more about it other than that. It's been good two-way action. It is interesting. It's kind of like one of those love-hate things with Michigan. I mean, people, yes, and the coach with Harbaugh and stuff like that. It's either you love them or you loathe them kind of thing. But really, since the line kind of settled at 3.5, I've got like dead two-way action. Like I'm as balanced as you can be. When it was like a little bit higher at 4 and 4.5, yes, I do have about 2-1 money favoring Iowa. But since sitting at 3.5, I'm completely balanced.
All right, so we move down to game 373, 374 here. This is the other game with sharp action that we're going to talk about here on the segment. Then I do want to hit Auburn, Florida real quickly. But in terms of this TCU-Iowa State game, Seems like it's a pretty well-defined sharp side here in this one too.
Yeah, this one's a solid game, I guess you would call on the board, and there's not a ton of them. Even you get your typical games that used to be decent games, like back in the day, Georgia Tennessee was a good game, something to look forward to, and now you're looking at a 24.5 point spread and stuff like that. So I think the kind of like the superior teams in college football, the way they've kind of really evolved in the last few years, and the cream of the crop is just so much better than the other teams nowadays. It's kind of takes away from all those games, the nice competitive games that we used to have back in the day. Even like I said, like the Georgia Tennessee game. Oklahoma's a massive favorite again. This is one of the more appealing games on the board. Iowa State at home to TCU. I got sharp money on Iowa State in this one at -3, so I'm ticked up to -3.5 right now. There's some like 3 -120s out there. I think there's a 3.5 dog 15. I'm sitting 3.5 flat right now. I've got you're pretty much. Let me just see here. Pretty much. At 3.5, I'm pretty much balanced. I did take an initial hit at Iowa State -3, so I got sharp and public money that way as well when it was at 3. Since going to 3.5, it's slightly favoring Iowa State, but definitely more balanced. And again, TCU's 3-1 here on the road at Iowa State 2-2. It seems like every year, Adam, I don't know, it's just Iowa State's one of those teams who just seems to like win and cover when they shouldn't, and they lose and don't cover when they should. But hopefully, this is one of those games where they should and they do.
Well, and again, a real important distinction here for our listeners that, maybe you take sharp money on Penn State at 25, all of a sudden you find yourself up to 28 and maybe even 28.5. You take sharp money here on Iowa State at a much lower, much more important number of 3, and you only go to 3.5.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, you really obviously it's managing risk around the number 3, and yeah, I mean, key numbers 3 and 7 in college football are pretty much, you don't really pay a ton of attention to other numbers. But again, like I said, I've gone to 3.5, and I'm just slightly more money on Iowa State, but almost balanced since going to 3.5. So there's really no incentive to go to 4 at a point like this, even though you got sharp money at the -3. If you can balance at 3.5 and see what happens. Again, we're doing this on Thursday, and these games are on Saturday, so there's still a lot of time to see where the market moves in terms of from now and Saturday. And if 3.5 is balancing things off, that kind of, the risk will pretty much get eaten up.
All right, so one other college game I want to talk about here, and again, this isn't one that has any sharp action, at least not in-house at DSI. There's a chance there's some sharp action out there in the marketplace with game 385, 386, Auburn and Florida. And I got to say, man, I was surprised to see this number come off of 3 at several places out there in the market.
Yeah. What are we sitting at? Yeah, I'd be inclined to going back up to 3. We are sitting at 2.5 -115. And again, college football, we tend not to do that much, like 3 dog money, 2.5 favorite 15 and stuff like that. But it just seems to be the consensus line out in the market right now, so I'm going that way as well. And one of the reasons I'm going that way is because I've got a count of about 8-1 since I've been moving to 2.5. So I'm more inclined right now that if you ask me now where this one's going to go, my feeling would be that it's going to go back up to 3. But even at 3, my wagered count was about 2-1 favoring on Auburn. So again, we talk about how early we are in the week, looking at how much is going to happen between tomorrow and then Saturday. So the market's down to 2.5 off the 3. So I'm kind of inclined to stay with them. My money exposure isn't a huge amount, even though my count is as big as it is favoring Auburn. So, I can't say that sharp money came somewhere on Florida. I can't say what number it came at, but my wagered count is very heavy one way in terms of Auburn, and my money's, like I said, it's not great, not a big decision either way, but all I've seen, in-house is Auburn money, yet the line's gone down. So you can kind of look into things and say, somewhere out in the market, sharp money must have came. I'm going to make an assumption and say that's true, but I don't know that.
I'm going to make a bad pun here, but I mean, I could see somebody baiting a hook and going down to 2.5 just to see what happened. But to see 2.5 be almost a consensus number now on such a marquee game, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, it's, you kind of have to read into these things sometimes. And we do have the advantage of sitting down, on my side of the counter and me sharing this with you in terms of how one side of my count is the other way.
All right, so we transition over to the NFL side of things here. We got 5 games to touch on in the professional ranks, and we start with the first game on Sunday, 451, 452, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. This not quite the AFC North rivalry that we're used to, because usually it's just slap 3 on the favorite and call it a day. Here, the favorite is 3, but they're on the road.
Yeah, I mean, in this game too, I mean, it might be surprising to know that the sharp money on this game came on the over here, over 42.5. You think about traditional Baltimore, Pittsburgh games. It's kind of like, if you want to quote unquote talk about, smash mouth football, this is kind of like teams that define that, but, not this season for sure. And you look at what, Baltimore, what happened last week. And, it's interesting because Baltimore lost, quite bad to Cleveland, and it's like, you kind of scratch your head and they like, what happened to Baltimore's defense? But I think there was, signs beforehand about their DBs that their secondary, for a couple of weeks now has been a concern. And I think probably that's one of those things that kind of kept the total low, just the perception of how good, quote unquote, Baltimore's defense is, but really how susceptible they are to, in terms of their secondary. So I'm really not surprised to see this number go up. I am at 44.5. So it's a full 2-point move on the total. Sharp money on the over 42.5. My count is about 2-1 favoring the over, which again is no surprise because public money usually comes in on the over. I do have a wager count about 3-1 favoring Pittsburgh as well. So this number went from 3.5. It's pretty much 3 minus 120 market wide right now. So the money is starting to come in on Pittsburgh. In-house, it's just been public money, though, a count of 3-1, so we've kind of adjusted on that, but sharp money on the over 42.5.
Now, I don't know if you have an answer to this question, but game 453, 454, Chicago and Oakland being played over in London, do you find, maybe internationally, or if you talk to anybody that's over in Europe, do you find that those London games, draw more attention maybe from areas that don't normally bet the NFL?
No, not really. Honestly, they get pretty much the same action as any other game. And again, it all depends on the quality of the game. I mean, this is on paper, this is a decent matchup. I was gonna say, two decent teams. We'll find out whether Oakland's a decent team or not still. But Chicago's generally one of the better teams in the league, so they're getting a lot of support. You look years back, it was like Jacksonville was there, every single year over in London, so you get not a whole lot of action on those games. Plus, I think too, one of the factors that bodes well for this this game is that it's the same time as the other games. Oftentimes these London games will be starting way early in the morning. People are like, look, I'm not going to be up to watch it, so I'm not going to bet it. But this game is as bet as well as any other this week.
All right, so next game with sharp action here, game 459, 460, Minnesota and the New York Football Giants. What do we got going on here?
The Football Giants, yeah. This the Giants, I understand that they've won a couple of games, but I think that, even now, after wins, they're one of those teams where I think sharps are continuing to downgrade. I mean, obviously Barkley being out was a big loss for them, but I think Jones, there was kind of like the initial, spike in enthusiasm about the Giants, but this seems to me like one of those spots where it's just like the public is kind of looking at the Giants as better than they are. And, Minnesota, we talk about, I've said this before in previous shows, that there's the idea that no team is as good nor as bad as their best or worst performance. And of course, Minnesota had a bad performance last week. It was just a terrible matchup for them, I think, in terms of Chicago's defense. And I think the Giants defense is not very good. So I'm not surprised at all to see sharp money on this game. On Minnesota minus 4.5. This line has ticked up just up to 5.5. I think it did touch 6 briefly and got bet back down right away. Even at 5.5, my money was pretty much balanced. So 5.5 seems to be the number working for me, which is where I am right now. So from 4.5 to 5.5. And I think, even defensively, I think Minnesota is just going to cause a ton of trouble with their edge pressure for the Giants. And I think Jones is going to be interesting to see how well he reads coverage and stuff like that. Being the Redskins last week with the quarterback situation and all that, I kind of take that with a grain of salt. So I'm not surprised at all to see Minnesota being bet by the sharp money here. Again, I got slightly more bets on the Giants. The public seems to be kind of, I guess, enthused with the Giants, and the bet count reflects that.
So is 5.5 good here, or do you think you're going up to 6?
I would not be surprised if it went up to 6 at all. I think even at 5.5, sharp money might get involved. But again, that's what it's going to take to move this number up to 6. It won't be public money going that way, because I think public money at 5.5 or will be pretty much balanced market wide. I think 5.5 might work just because the public seems to think the Giants might be better than they are.
All right, so game 465, 466 here, Tampa Bay and New Orleans. And this is kind of a recurring theme here, too, in terms of the sharp action.
Yeah, and again, talk about, New Orleans, they beat Dallas last week, and they look decent doing that. But you look at what Dallas did last week. I think it's important to look at how they played as well. Like a lot of people will look at a team and say, oh, New Orleans, they did this and that. But it's like, well, what did the other team do? Like, and I think Dallas was just extremely conservative last week, and Tampa Bay is a team where you're just not going to see them play conservative, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, they beat the Rams last week, and the Rams, their defense, I'm concerned about their defense. I think they can get lit up, that team. So we'll find out here on Thursday night if Seattle takes advantage of that. But this is probably the biggest single move of the week. Tampa Bay plus 5.5 is where the sharp money came in. I'm down to 3 flat right now. This number, I'm surprised, is even kind of like ticking down even from 3 flats. So I'd be surprised if it was went to 3 dog 15 or something like that. But the trend definitely is down on this number from 5.5 all the way down to 3. So that's just it's just a massive move when you go through 4 like that all the way down to key number 3. It's a huge move. Looking at my wager count, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty much even. So I'm kind of hoping I can balance at 3. Even at 3.5, though, I was still getting a weighted count of almost 3-1 Tampa Bay. Now that it's hit 3, I'm starting to get probably 2-1 count back on New Orleans. So, by the time this kicks, maybe, my money will be balanced. I'm hoping so, but I think this number is going to stay around 3. I just don't get, judging where the market is right now, I can't see it going back up to 3.5 again.
All right, so we go to Sunday Night Football here, and this was supposed to be Andrew Luck versus Patrick Mahomes, and instead it's Jacoby Brissett against Patrick Mahomes, and that certainly has an impact on what this line is now as we're actually into Week 5. Kansas City, an 11-point favorite here. Sharp action involved in this game. Is it on the side or the total?
Yeah, this one did move from 9 up to 11 where it is right now. I think it's starting to get nibbles back. But the sharp money that I took was not on the spread at all. I do have even at 10.5 though. I've got slight wager count favoring Indianapolis at 11 and even slightly more around 3-1. So my feeling is this number is going to come back down. When it was 9.5, it was about 2-1 favoring Kansas City. So if this settled at 10.5 or 10.5 or even back down to 10, I wouldn't be surprised about that. Sharp money came on the total of this one though. There was initially bet up from 55 all the way up to 57. You kind of hit, you talk about throwing numbers out there and see kind of where they stick. Well, 57 was the spot where sharp money came back down on the under. So sharp money is on this game on the total under 57. I'm sitting at 56 right now. I think this one's going to trend back down to maybe 55 by kickoff. I definitely see this hitting down to 55.5, Adam.
So was that a head fake, or is that just different, groups of sharp money kind of warring with each other on the total?
No, it was mostly, again, and you got to remember that when you initially throw out a number, until sharps are involved, you kind of go with your money, whether it's sharp money or public money. So if the sharp starts betting you up on a game like this, and with Kansas City involved, it's really not a surprise. So, the fact that a number went up was just, from my perspective, was just public money driving it up, as you would kind of expect. And then sharp money, again, you kind of found the spot where they were going to get involved, and it's come back down. Like I said, I just think the trend now is this number going back down.
Well, I think the best thing of the week here in the NFL, outside of the Dolphins being an underdog on their bye week, is that we actually have a good Monday Night Football game here. The Browns and the 49ers. This is going to get a lot of attention, a big betting handle, and a pretty damn good game.
Yeah, on paper, this definitely is a good game. And we finally got a situation, I think, is for the first time this year. You've got a team coming off a bye, and they're playing on the Monday night as well. So that's kind of a long break for San Francisco. I know initially with the byes, there was kind of a lot of value being found on teams coming off the bye. I think that's evaporated a bit. But it's also interesting because, in terms of preseason futures and stuff like that, these are probably two of the more heavily bet teams, and it was all positive bets on them in terms of people betting the Browns to have success, and San Francisco as well. They were one of the teams who were bet in the Super Bowl and regular season wins and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that we have kind of two teams that people in the public were kind of high on coming on a Monday night game does bode well for handle for sure. This number has, it did initially tick down from, I think 4.5 as 4 was where it opened, went down to 3 and 3.5, 3.5 dog 15 and stuff like that. So right now we are sitting at 3.5 flat. There is a 4 out on the board. I took sharp money on San Francisco, so the home favorite -3.5, -05 is where that came in. So the 5-cent difference. Again, it counts slightly favors Cleveland, just public money there. there. They obviously had that really, really big road win last week. So sometimes people get kind of like the hangover of the success that they had. So the Cleveland, the Browns went in there and beat up the Ravens quite handily. But again, the Ravens and Niners are definitely different teams. And of course, you got the Browns now on back-to-back weeks on the road and stuff like that here on Monday night versus San Fran coming off on a bye. So it's really not surprised to see that kind of the sharp money identified San Fran as finding value. Public money on Cleveland like they have pretty much all year.
What about the total for this game? Because I feel like this is a stone cold over bet for a lot of public bettors. Where are you sitting on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting at 46.5. I think this did open at, it opened 46.5 or 47, so it really hasn't moved at all. But my wager count is all over. So 46.5 right now. I've got a wager count almost like 5-1 favoring the over. So I just based on what I've seen in house, I could definitely see this going back up to 47, maybe even higher.
Brent, the head risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook, sharing the sharp money with us in both the college football and the NFL betting markets. Brent, always appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Adam.